Welcome to the Thriving Mayor Show, the weekly broadcast featuring former and current mayors who are thriving, sharing their story, insight, wisdom, and viewpoint. Join us and comment on social media as we meet another of the superheroes we elect to lead the rejuvenation of our towns and cities and who serve us all. Visit www.thrivingmayor.com to learn more. Here we go. Hello, everyone. It's Michael Hubicki, host of the Thriving Mayor Show. It's February 3rd, 2021, and today I'm honored and really happy to have as our featured guest, George Cuff. Hello, George. How are you today?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing really well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just want to explain what I think happened. We're going live at about 10:10 Eastern today as opposed to 10 a.m. I installed a new Google Drive backup on my computer, and turns out that it was backing up my computer unbeknownst to me. So that's a lesson learned in this modern age of technology and working virtually. So if you've got some things running in the background applications, make sure you check it out. So by way of a quick introduction to George, I just wanted to go to the current issue of Municipal World magazine, which is a magazine that I subscribe to. And if you're interested in municipal politics in Canada or anywhere, it's a really excellent magazine. And George has a regular article in the back, which is called The Governance Zone. And in the issue here, it says, George is our government zone expert. He's been involved in local government in one way or another since 1970. He has been a recreation and youth specialist, a department head, a mayor for 12 years, and a consultant/advisor to municipalities since 1976. He is the author of 8 books on local government policy governance. His latest book is Leading: The Real Value of a Mayor and Council. He has also written hundreds of articles and columns in Municipal World since 1984. Now, George, did I read this correctly? It says you are the author of 8 books.
Yeah, that needs to be updated. The 8 books became 10 as a result of COVID. So I wrote one called The Mayor, which will be out in probably within the next 6 months.
Oh, neat.
And that will probably be helpful to your show. It interviews mayors across Canada, provides a background to what mayors actually should be doing or not doing. And I also have, as you know, published a book with my daughter called Tucker Goes to City Hall. So that's books 9 and 10, and Tucker Goes to City Hall has now been published. It's available for anyone that would like to find a way to introduce their child or grandchild to the world of local government.
Awesome. And we'll get into Tucker in a minute, but I also wanted to read a couple of quotes from one of my favorite books by George called Leading: The Real Value of a Mayor and Council. And I'm going to read 2 quotes from it. I'm going to read a quote to start, which is in George's section called A Closing Thought. It says, and this is to leaders in municipal government mainly, I commend you as someone who is willing to help lead your community. Do it well. Place the needs of others before your own and seek to leave a positive legacy that will carry on well past your time in office. Couldn't have said it better myself. Those are really wonderful way. Oh, and the last line, may God richly bless your efforts. So thank you so much for that, George. And this is a wonderful read. And not being a politician myself, I'm learning a lot from it and using it in my coaching all the time. So please share with us a little bit about the journey with your daughter Jill, and how Tucker Goes to City Hall got started, and a little bit about that creative process working together, and how it culminated.
So Jill has been, because of a blended family and blended marriage, Jill has been in my home for a good chunk of her growing up years, and even so now, because she lives in Spruce Grove, just west of Edmonton, where I live. She's a very creative person. She has a background as a nurse, as a registered nurse, worked in ICU. She also taught a preschool program and, in fact, set it up herself, and so has a real creative flair. Has a love of dogs, including her own poodle and schnoodle, and her schnoodle is called Tucker. And she would have Tucker over to visit us. So the Tucker's been in our family for quite some time too. I think about 10 years.
Right.
Jill is an illustrator, so we put the two talents together. Mine in terms of writing and trying to tell a municipal story. This was a challenge because I'm not used to writing to a grade 6 or grade 5 audience, although I've spoken to them during local government week. So I thought, what a great opportunity to put her gifts with whatever limited ones I have. And, so we told the story of walking through the community. She has a real background in terms of being able to illustrate the story. So once I put the story together, she put the illustrations together.
Can you show us a couple of the illustrations, George?
The book is out. So this is the front cover of the book. Tucker Goes to City Hall.
Yeah.
And she has some great stories in it in terms of Tucker and seeing the City Hall picture, Tucker meeting with the mayor, Tucker being a part of watching a vehicle get towed away by a bylaw enforcement officer,
Right.
and trying to figure out who's going to pay for the potholes.
Oh yeah.
So each one of these little stories, and I can't remember, it's about 50 pages of wording. Each one of the stories tells a little bit of the story of local government. You know, what does City Hall do? Tucker starts off and bumps into a lady giving a ticket to a car that's illegally parked. You know, why are you ticketing the car? What are you doing? Where does the money go? Goes to City Hall. Has this vision of City Hall looking like Fort Knox, and then goes on again down to the leisure center. Where does the money go when you pay for your fees? Who decides that? How do you decide fees and charges as a policy? And so it kind of blends in a lot of what governments do and why it does that. It gets an opportunity to go down to City Hall, talks to a bright young lady who's manning the front desk, so to speak, asks to see the mayor. The nice mayor, who's a middle-aged lady, walks out and greets them kindly, takes Tucker and Charles, the boy, the 12-year-old, into her office, gives an opportunity to talk about City Hall, talk about the council chambers. Where's the mayor's chair? Why is it raised compared to the other 6 chairs? What do council members do? And you learn about a delegation, you learn about fees and charges, you learn about bylaws. The two of them go for a walk in the summertime and they see a park where there's Canada Day or Community Day going on, and learns all about volunteerism as a result of asking questions at each booth. So who's looking after this booth? Why is the whatever club, Kinsman Club, Rotary Club involved? What do they do? And so you learn all about what the various parts that make up a community in an engaging, kind of interesting way. You know, where's your community? What's the name of the community? When did it start? When did it become a town, a village, a city? Fill in the dates. And then I've got questions at the end of each chapter.
Yeah.
And Jill has got these marvelous illustrations that are captivating, tell the story. And anyway.
Yeah, this sounds wonderful. Now, how long did that process with Jill last?
Well, that's a good question. It's probably about a 6-month process, start to finish. And you're obviously not working on it full time, but because I was working on this other book at the same time. But it's a process that takes some time, and it a number of iterations back and forth. I typically keep track of all of the iterations, and I think I was probably up to about 20 different editions by the time we got through it all. So anyway, and I do all of my own editing, so that there's very little editing to be done by the publisher, although they obviously do some of it. And I'm thankful to Municipal World because they publish great stuff. And They've been a great forum for people that want to learn something about local government. The degree of ignorance about government and how it works is unbelievable. So if you can fill in a bit of that gap, starting with local government, which is where it's at.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, I remember talking to a former mayor of Regina who said, it's like people forgot who I am. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I went from being the mayor to a member of parliament to a cabinet minister. He said, and the phone calls and now texts and emails dropped off dramatically because people don't know what an MP and or an MPP or an MLA and a
Yeah.
cabinet minister, they don't know what they do, but they know what the mayor does.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
people contact the mayor's office. Anyway, it was a really good kind of quick symbol of, local government is vital. It's important. It impacts
Yeah.
our daily lives. And anyway.
You mentioned about they forgot who the former mayor was, and one of the shows we had Anne Marie DeChico Best, who was a 3-term mayor at London, Ontario,
Right.
and in her last election, she was defeated, and in her last week in her office space in City Hall, her assistant was saying, "I think our phone's broken." She says, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, there's no more calls." She said, "Well, of course there's no more calls. I'm not the leader anymore." And,
Yeah.
that was her transition. She left her legacy, and she was moving on. Just a quick question, George: is there another book in the offing here? Is there Tucker Goes to the Election, or Tucker on Election Night, or something like that?
We're right now discussing what's the sequel to this, because we've got a number of ideas. So I hope that generates itself in doing book number 2 and perhaps number 3. It's hopefully this catches on. I think it will.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity, particularly COVID time. You've got a great resource to be teaching your child or grandchild something that's useful, that's going to be applicable throughout life. And so it's a fun way to learn. It's an interesting way to learn. So your point about running in an election would be a really good one. The connection between local government, provincial and federal would probably also be a good one. How do we tie the 3 together? Who does what? Who looks after the post office? Who looks after Canada Defence? Who looks after international relations? Who looks after the education system? Who looks after the health system? All of that could be
It goes on and on.
Yeah, all that could be a part of a book that talks sort of local government and how it bridges with other levels of government. Or you could just take local government, and we've only explored a part of it in this first offering. So I think there's probably more to come, and hopefully people are encouraged by what they see, and hopefully they get online and talk to either myself or my daughter Jill and connect with it.
So I'll just share with people right now. They can go to www.shenanigans.ca, and schnoodle is a cross between a schnauzer and a poodle.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll put the links below our video when we post up, and people can go there. And also on Instagram, it's Tucker_Tales, and it's TALES. So Tales of Going to City Hall, stories for children, and really for all of us. Is there anywhere else that the book is available, George?
No, not at the moment. So Municipal World is the best source. I'm hopeful that we'll get it into the school system. If I was currently a mayor going off to talk to a grade 6 or grade 5 class, I'd have 30 of these in my hand to hand out to every child to take home, because they're such a valuable resource. It sounds like me flogging the book, but quite frankly, if I'd had access to a book like this, I'd have been taking it with me all those years that I was mayor.
You could have given it to your counselors.
Yeah, well, we've got a very supportive council and a mayor here, so they've already indicated a desire for the book. I've also had a couple of senior staff members across Alberta write to me and say, "This is marvelous. How do we get these into the hands of our educators?" So hopefully it will go across.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Congratulations on that. I think George is frozen. Okay, there you are. George,
Am I
would
still
you?
frozen? Or,
No, you're good now. It just with
Yeah,
so many people staying home these days, working from home, I think our bandwidth is really starting to struggle.
I think we're
George,
fine.
would you be so kind as to share a little bit of the background of your transition from your corporate life into politics, and kind of the story about why mayor, and your first election, and kind of the emotional roller coaster, the decisions that you have to make along the way.
So I had spent some time. Actually, I did so badly in high school that I spent an extra year. I wasn't sure whether it was the sports or the girls that distracted me, but I think a combination of both.
Hmm.
So I graduated 2 years successively. I've had friends of mine tell me it took them 4 or 5 years, so I was feeling fairly good about that. I grew
Yeah.
up in the tough side of Edmonton called Jasper Place. It was a town in those days, no longer exists. I think we annexed Edmonton, or they perhaps annexed us.
Right. Right.
Uh, but in any case, spent work with the Royal Bank because that's where I landed right after high school. No really good education to apply,
Really.
other than I could get in, work for an oil and gas company. Eventually, I realized that I was going to go nowhere. I had a couple of great pictures in my mind that were stopping me. And
Yeah.
so I went and talked to the university, and they said, sure, come ahead. Eventually, they figured out that I didn't have the marks to get in because of my math and chemistry and so on. Sent me to Concordia College, which is a wonderful college on Ada Boulevard in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And I took my first year there, and then I spent the next 3 years at the University of Alberta, and graduated with an honors degree in recreation administration. Came out as the director of Parks and Recreation in Spruce Grove. And during that time at university, I worked as the playground leader, as a youth specialist,
Mm.
then as a director of Parks and Rec for a couple of years. And then the current mayor was leaving town and said to me, he came to my home and said, George, why don't you run for mayor? And a friend of mine was with me, and he said, and Darwin, why don't you run for council? And we had just run the annual parade. And so Darwin looked at me and said, if you can run a parade, you can run council. So
That's
the two
awesome.
of us ran, we both got elected. And I remember getting a poster from him, a ceiling to floor poster, and it's got a picture of this guy out in front of a crowd. And the poster says, just remember, when you're getting run out of town, get in front of the crowd and make it look like a parade.
Oh, that's
So anyway,
awesome.
not a bad adage. I spent 12 years. During that time, I became president of our provincial association, president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Both of those are great honors. Stepped down at the end of 1989, uh, largely because what was there left to be done in part. So you've got to have an agenda in front of you. You've got to have a passion for carrying on. What's next? And
Yeah.
when it becomes about serving yourself, that's time to leave. And whether that's 2 terms or 3 terms or four, I'm not sure how many it is. Some people, like a Hazel McCallion in Mississauga, were able to keep up the energy and the enthusiasm for a lot of years, her
Hmm.
into her 90th year, I think. So it's hard to sort of categorize and tell people when to quit. But I think it's just that some people don't know, and they go once to the polls too often, and they get beat, and it's a great setback because it's like the
Hmm.
community saying, we don't love you anymore, we don't want you, regardless of all your time and effort. Time for you to leave the community, or leave the role at least. So, at the same time, I was a full-time management consultant, and so I was a mayor, evenings, weekends, noon hours. The rest of the time, I was consulting, like I am today, right across Canada and the
Yeah.
U.S. And so it was a very busy and hectic life. And I told people that at the end of 12 years, the greatest discovery was finding out that I had the same number of family members at the start as at the end. And that probably was the biggest accomplishment. It's a time. It takes time from your life. It
Wow.
becomes such a central part of your life. It's an important part of your life. Everything you do the moment you leave the door of your house is public business. And the public has an eye on you, as some mayors are finding out during these COVID times, and MLAs and MPs and cabinet ministers. People know who you are. So this notion that you're going to slip away to Mexico or Florida or whatever
Or your
is,
cottage.
yeah, or your cottage is
Yeah.
absolutely, not permitted. You're setting what's called the tone at the top.
Mm.
And if you're going to be an effective mayor, effective any level of government, you're in the public eye. And boy, I'll tell you, there's a much higher expectation that your ethics, your behavior are going to display the best, not the worst. You can't even be average when you're a mayor or a council member. You're being expected to lead the way, and
And
your words
especially,
will count for nothing.
yeah, and especially in municipal politics, because the people you live with elect you, and they're the
Yeah,
ones watching. And with
yeah,
social media nowadays, with blogs and very well educated, articulate, influential people are sharing their opinion, which may or may not be shared by a lot of people, but they can make it look like it's news or the truth, or have a lot of influence. So yeah, it's really challenging. I just
yeah,
wanted to also mention, George, that the you mentioned about the setback and the feeling that you're not wanted anymore. And I just want to take my hat off to all of the mayors who demonstrate to us that win or lose, that they are putting themselves out there. They're dedicated to us. They're ready to serve us, and it's really the reputation sometimes that we're judging. And to go into an election with a growth mindset like you do, win or lose, I'm going to do my very best, and I'm here to serve, and it's not about me, is really admirable. And that's something that I hope to aspire to as well in the work that I do. So thank you to all the mayors and all the councillors and all the politicians who are out there and serving us, but especially mayors that there's just one spot, not like a
yeah.
council. There might be 4 or 5 or 6 or 12. So,
Yeah,
um,
I've written reports on local governments across Canada, and I've had the odd mayor say to me, "Well, why did you single me out in the report in terms of whatever the issues were?" And I said, "There's only one of you. There's
yeah,
6 councillors or 12 councillors, whatever the size of your council. The
yeah,
mayor is absolutely distinct. People know the mayor, they know the role. And even today, I get people bumping into me and thinking, in fact, I have people asking, so what are you doing now? Which I find humorous because they didn't pay me enough to be just the mayor back then. So did you really think I was making enough money? In most cases, right across Canada today, the mayors are giving of themselves. They're giving of
yeah,
their time, and even full-time mayors, the amount of money being paid, you can make an awful lot more money in the private sector than you ever could being a mayor, getting what's called an honorarium. And
yeah,
you're expecting, and people say, oh, well, you're being paid for this and so on. It's very, very limited. It's a financial pat on the back. It's
yeah,
because you've got a servant heart. You want to help people. You want to see the community grow. I tell people it has nothing to do about your personal background. It has
hmm,
everything to do with your passion for the community. You didn't get elected as a project engineer. You got elected as a citizen, as somebody that loves the community in which you're in. That's why you're serving.
yeah. Well, and further to that, you didn't get elected as an engineer. You also say in leading that mayors and councillors aren't getting elected to manage. We already have excellent administration. We've got CAOs. We've got staff that are trained. They work. They make our cities run. And our leaders are elected to lead and to provide vision and influence and to take us down that road and be our representatives. So I think that's really it's so well stated in here, and yet quite often someone may be running and saying, I used to be a manager. I manage this, I manage that, and we think, okay, that's what we need here, but we really need the vision and
Yeah,
the leadership.
yeah. The two words that have served me for the last 40 plus years as a consultant that brought me into communities are the words role clarity.
Mm,
And it's the problem that councils struggle with. They get elected to govern, they get elected to lead, they get elected to make decisions. They don't get elected to manage the public works department.
yeah,
And a lot of them, unfortunately, get in, and within days, they presume that that's my role because they haven't been taught clearly that the role is governance. That's a very distinct role. People at the
yeah,
provincial and federal level have a much better grasp on that than they do locally. Locally, it's because every citizen expects you're in charge of the snow clearance, you're in charge of the parks maintenance, you're in charge of the getting the curling tournament going or whatever.
hmm,
And little do they know that that's by and large day-to-day management. You're there to make sure things happen. You're there to
yeah,
make sure the community continues to prosper.
yeah,
But the day-to-day management, you've hired hopefully qualified people to do that. So it's a delicate balance between governance and management, and that's what people strive to understand. And quite frankly, communities are still working on that 40 years after I started.
Yeah. And that's all after you get elected.
Yes.
And I was just curious, you after that meeting with the current serving mayor of Spruce Grove, and he said, "Hey George, how about this? Well, take us through the next couple of steps." And then on election night, was it contested or was it a slam dunk?
And it was the first fully contested mayor's race in the then town of Spruce Grove. We became a city when I was mayor, so the
Right.
then town of Spruce Grove, and we had 5 of us running. I was the young up upper start person that was 29 years of age.
Wow.
And it was unbelievable because I had people that were experienced. I had one person that I thought for sure if I wasn't going to win, I hoped he would.
Yeah.
And I had other people that were just really quite different. So it was we had a very dynamic crowd that showed up, 500 people at our local auditorium to hear people give speeches. And it was the first bruising battle for mayor. Anyway, I survived and got elected and ended up running 4 terms, 2 of which I got to walk because I was in by acclamation,
Yeah.
and 2 that I ran. So it was election night. The first time was, if you had a picture of me with my hair is long now, but it was shaggy then, and I had a lot more of it. And I looked at those pictures and thought, why would anybody elect this young person that looks like they just came out of Haight-Ashbury in Los Angeles? It just, to me, it looked like the hippie had just got elected. Anyway, I had some education. I had a bit of experience.
Yeah.
I had a love of the community, and I had a young council that was prepared to do things. And our community grew unbelievably over a 12-year period of time. We went from when I first came to Spruce Grove, it might have been 6,000 or 7,000 people.
Wow.
It's now probably 37,000 people.
Wow.
So we've grown dramatically. It's a bustling community. We've got a good mayor, a good council. We're fortunate to have the people that we have elected to serve us. The one thing I've never done is I've never gone into council chambers and challenged our council, our sitting council. I've talked to mayors, I've talked to councilors. They bought me coffee, they bought me lunch. And I tell them I'll give you a piece of my mind that I can ill afford to do without. But I'm happy to chat with you and share my ideas with you. But other than that, whether you implement them or not, that's up to you. I'm not being paid to advise you, nor
Yeah.
will I ever consult in Spruce Grove. So they're fortunate. They get to have me leave them alone unless I'm asked to weigh
Yeah.
in on something. I
And
just don't
and
think it's wise for an ex-mayor to be involved in current business. I had my 12 years. If I didn't impact things then, I would never impact things. So
well put. And I love your point about going for a coffee and a personal face to face. Here's what I'm thinking, and here's my point of view in a really respectful way
yes,
that they can just take it for what the value it is to them, and you're not pointing it, singling anyone out. There's no embarrassment. You're not drawing this line in the sand, so to speak, which so many people do nowadays, whether it's in their own social media or going to councils, and some councils that I've seen can almost get a little bit intimidated because these people just keep coming and they're there so often. And I've had one counselor told me, well, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and
yeah,
it's unfortunate, but hopefully we're all going to be able to get better participation and representation. And a book like Tucker Goes to City Hall, I think, is for all of us. It starts with our kids, but we can all learn so much about it. George, I read a little bit about your charity. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about that and how that started, and why what you're doing with that.
uh, my wife and I attend a Baptist church here in Spruce Grove. We had an elderly couple came to the church, asked if we would, as a church, support a young pastor in Romania, northwestern Romania, in the province of Transylvania, best known for Vlad the Impaler or Dracula. But
Yeah.
in any case, a Hungarian-speaking area. The pastor, when we finally met him, he said, "Do you know the language of heaven?" And I said, "No, what's that?" He said, "It's Hungarian." I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Because it'll take you all eternity to learn it."
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so we ended up getting involved. My wife and I went there 4 years later in 1996. We've been there now 16 times in the last 24 years.
Wow.
We've helped grow their community a little bit. But I asked him at one point, so what do you need besides us helping you with the refurbishing a church or whatever? And he said, we need a camp for children. And so we said to the pastor, you find the land, we'll find the money. And so he did. He found a farmer that was prepared. And it's a beautiful part of Romania, rolling hills and so on. And he found the 30 acres, and we found the 20 donors here in our area who we know and are connected to, that don't go to our church. They simply believe in what we're trying to accomplish. And we're right now building this camp. You can go online and find it at rootsinromania.com. And it's a wonderful camp. It's now rising up out of the ground even as we speak. Obviously, they're relying on funding. They have all of the workers. They build wonderful buildings. They just don't have the money. So we try to provide the resources. They do the work. They've employed people from the village. The pastor keeps joking about their small village of 200 people being the center of the world, because we've had so many groups and teams come to the village, go and work in the camp and help out. I'm not sure how much help a lot of us are, but we're an encouragement to them in terms of their communities. So, it's been a great, so the proceeds from my videos and from my writings, all of it 100% go to support this children's camp in northwestern Romania. And no, we don't have any family connection. We don't have any historical connection. It's simply through this young pastor who's now middle-aged and is still serving. He was serving 11 churches at one time, because Ceausescu had done such a good job of driving all religion underground. And so pastors are just not available. So he was looking after on horseback, and we eventually got him a car, and we just continued to update the car. Anyway, it's a marvelous ministry. It's a marvelous part of the world. I would encourage people to go online. You can check my website out and find out a connection to the camp in Romania, or you'll see it in the books or articles or videos that I've written.
Can you remind us about the website address, George?
Sure, it's just georgecuff.com.
Okay.
And you can find connections, and we'll make sure that there's a connection on there for Tucker's Tales as well. But
and
feel free to connect.
rootsinromania.com.
And rootsinromania.com, and you'll see a really good story about the development of kids, the importance of education, the importance of a spiritual grounding, all of that, the importance of leadership development for young people, all of it. And it's anyway marvelous. And the couple that is now running the camp, the young fellow grew up across the street from us in Spruce Grove and spent much of his time on our front step, being mentored by my wife over Coke and cookies.
Wow.
So it's an unbelievable story. You end up 4,000 miles away in a small part of the world called Romania, and you grew up across the street from the Cuffs on Winchester Avenue in Spruce Grove.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, George, I just wanted to say thank you so much. You're a really shining example of a thriving mayor, and continuing on your not only your legacy as a mayor, but your living legacy. And just thank you so much for your leadership and stewardship. And I wanted to read a second quote from your book, Leading. Everyone can see that. And this is a quote where you're actually quoting Wayne Gretzky. And it says, someone once asked famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky to what he attributed his success. He responded, skate to where the puck is going, not where it has been. And I just want to, I thought that was really a beautiful quote, especially seeing now and hearing now, George, about how you're leading us to our future. You're leading us to where the puck's going with our children. And whether it's in Canada or anywhere with Tucker, goes to City Hall or Roots in Romania. So I just really, really, really want to thank you for your foresight and your stewardship and helping us all to thrive and be better.
Thank you, Mike, and best wishes to your audience. And again, support the Tucker's Tales. It's a great book, and it's a great opportunity to get your children, grandchildren involved. That's where it's at. Is our future is based on our ability to encourage young people to get involved in leading their own community. God bless you all.
Yeah. Thank you very much, George. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next week. Thank you for joining the Thriving Mayor Show. make sure to like and share and tell your friends and colleagues. Mayors are awesome and are the change agents to enhance the quality of living for over 80% of us. Remember what Coach Wooden said, you cannot live a perfect day without doing something for someone who can never repay you. Much love and peace until next time.